Hello and welcome to Color with Kendi. In today's video, I'm going to walk you through my amazing gouache brush set for Procreate. I'm going to walk you through all the brushes in this video series. Today's video is part 2. We talked about part 1 last week. This video is for anyone who's purchased the set or who is interested in getting it and wants to know exactly how to use the brushes. But sometimes you buy brushes and you don't know what to do with them. Well, I'm here to help. If you haven't yet purchased the pack and you are interested in finding out more, you can find a link in the description as well as the pinned comment, and there are timestamps and chapters available for you too, so you can skip around this video. Let's begin. So if you purchased the brush set, you'll have a bunch of different files that you can import. I have spoken about that very briefly in the previous video. Today we are going to open up the brush tutorial canvas and continue talking about the brushes. We talked about a bunch of different brushes in the last video. So in the last video, we went through dilute background wash all the way down to the soft edge paint C brush. And today we're going to talk about the remaining brushes as well as the paper texture canvas. And as I mentioned, there are chapters, so feel free to skip around. Okay, so what we're going to do to continue from last week is we're going to open up the layers panel and we are going to turn off the soft edge paint and then tap on dry gouache and turn that on. And I am going to go to the brush library and tap on the dry gouache A brush. And I'm going to select blue. And as I mentioned in the previous video, I like to select colors that are not too dark or too light when I'm testing the brushes. The darker, the better, because you really do see the texture. But let's go with something in between. And I also mentioned in my previous video that whenever you buy any of my brushes, they will come with some preset sizes. You can click and tap on these very easily, but that doesn't mean you only use it at these sizes. You can always change the size as you see fit. These are the sizes I generally use these brushes at the most, but you don't have to. It's just a guide. Okay, so let's talk about dry gouache A, B, and C. And these are really dry brushes. And generally with gouache, when I paint with gouache, I would paint with brushes that are not so dry, but sometimes you want to add some more texture. These are nice for that. And these are all relatively similar with slight differences. That's why they're A, B, and C. So tap on dry gouache A, make sure that you have the color you want, and we're going to go with the preset size in between, which is 40. And as I mentioned last week, it's all about the pressure. So at light pressure, that's what this brush looks like. You see a little bit of that brushiness and you see some of the paper peeking through. At heavy pressure, it looks like this. And when you lift your pencil and lay more pigment, what you'll see is this overlap. So with these brushes, I do suggest that you vary the pressure when you fill in a shape and you will get interesting results. And lift your pencil too when you use it. By lifting your pencil and varying your pressure, you get something that has a lot of texture and variety. But if you didn't lift your pencil and you use exactly the same pressure throughout, you would get something that is quite flat in the center, but it still has some texture on the edges. So if that's the look you want, just use the exact same pressure throughout. But if you want something that looks more like this, make sure to vary your pressure while you apply the paint. Okay, let's move on to dry gouache B. Same concept. I'm going to use a mid-size here. Light pressure, that's what it looks like. Heavy pressure, what a difference. Completely different look. And filling in the shape, you can start off with light pressure if you like. Lift your pencil and then add some more pigment. And you know what? I want to show you this on the side here. When you lift your pencil with this one, apply more pigment. I'm going to zoom in so you can really see this. So let's say I apply some pigment, lift my pencil, and then apply more. Do you see every time? Do you see what's happening here? You're getting this interesting texture. So I'm just applying very light pressure here. And it's as though you're applying more pigment and it's drying on the surface. So it's creating this interesting texture and it's not flat. If I did this, it would look very flat. Do you see how that looks quite different? So it's all about how much pressure you apply and how many times you pick up the pencil and apply more pigment. So that is dry gouache B. And then dry gouache C, similar concept. I'm using the preset size of 25. I'm going to zoom in. Light pressure, it looks like that. Heavy pressure, it looks like that. And then at a larger size, at light pressure, it looks like that. And if I lift my pencil and then apply more pigment, you can create an interesting look. So with this one, what I would suggest is if you're filling in a shape, start out with your light pressure and then start to lift your pencil and then add more pigment. And leave some areas where there's less pigment so you create this interesting variety. So this is a nice brush to use to fill in a background with a variety of textures. So as you can see, they're all slightly different. This one's probably the most soft looking from these. This one's got a lot more of the tooth of the paper showing through. So they are similar, but slightly different. That's why it's A, B, and C. All right, so now let's move on to the next layer. So let's turn that off and let's tap on detail brushes, turn that on. And I'm gonna go in a little bit darker for this, just because usually for details I go in a little bit darker. So just so you can really see this. So I'm gonna zoom in. So this is the gouache detail brush that we're gonna talk about right here. So detail brushes are not meant for filling in large areas. It's meant for doing details after you've filled in a shape and you wanna add some details to it. And the size definitely will change how it looks. So at light pressure, that's kind of what that looks like. And at heavy pressure, it looks like that. And if you reduce the size, light pressure, heavy pressure. So if you zoom in, what you'll see is there is definitely texture in the center. It's not completely flat. And here you see that tapered end. If you ever want to create that tapered end, the trick is when you are laying down the pigment, lift your brush towards the end. So lay down the pigment and lift. If you don't lift your brush, you're not going to get that tapered end. So if I did this, see, I didn't lift my brush off the screen while I did that. I lifted it after I was done the stroke. What you end up doing is creating an end like that. But if you lift it up as you apply the pigment, you get that nice taper. So that's that gouache detail brush. It's what I would use for details. And there are a bunch of other brushes too for details. I would use these for details that need a little bit of a different texture. So I'm going to show you. Soft edge detail. So I'm using the preset size 55. So light pressure, heavy pressure. Do you see there's less texture in the center? There's more texture on the sides. And if I go to larger size, soft pressure, heavy pressure. So depending on how much pressure you apply, you can also change the thickness of the line. So this is very much pressure dependent. So play around with this and use a variety of different pressures to create a variety of different details. Then we have thick detail A and B. These are detail brushes, slightly different textures. And I actually like thick detail B the best. We'll get to that. Let's talk about A first. And same concept, pressure dependent. So light pressure, something like that. Heavy pressure, something like that. Now if I go up in size, light pressure, heavy pressure. So do you see, you're seeing a little bit of the tooth of the paper. There's some dryness to this detail brush. And also, depending on how much pressure you apply, you will get a variety in terms of the thickness. So that's what that looks like. Now, thick detail B, similar concept, slightly different texture. So light pressure, heavy pressure. Oh, it's much thicker actually, a lot thicker. And this is very much pressure dependent. I really like this brush when I want to create grungy looking texture. And this one, just, I don't know, something, it's very satisfying to use this one compared to the other brushes. I don't know, it's a personal preference. I think when it comes to detail brushes, it's really a personal preference. It's got a lot more interesting texture compared to the other. So depending on your illustration, you might pick one over the other. If you want to make an illustration of flowers, you might pick this one or this one. But if you have an illustration with animals and need more texture, I would use thick detail B for a fur texture. And the size definitely changes how it looks. At a smaller size, you don't see that texture as much. So definitely play around with the size, the pressure, and you will get a variety of different looks from these brushes. So now let's move on to the next layer. Let's turn this off, go to Smudgers, and turn this on. We have Smudger A, B, and C. These all smudge, but they look slightly different. Now, in order to smudge something, you need to lay down some pigment first. So let's do that together. And to lay down the pigment, I'm going to go in with basic wash C. Any brush will do, just lay down some pigment. So I'm going to lay down some blue. And then let's lay down maybe some magenta-ish. I'm not very good with color names. I don't know what to call that, but yes, that's a nice color to lay down. Okay, so now that we have laid down some color, we are ready to smudge. So let's go into the smudge tool. So right at the top, you'll see A, B, and C. I don't know why I said SPE. A, B, and C. So Smudger A, it says use with smudge tool. So you need to use these with the smudge tool. This is the brush tool. Smudge tool is right here. So what I typically do is I will go to the brush library first and then select the brush and then tap and hold. And then it will become that brush for smudging. That's just how I do it. But you can open up the smudge tool library here and then select the smudger. So let's zoom in, and the smudger, I'm going to use it at its preset size, 50. You can definitely change the size. And with smudgers, the direction in which you smudge makes such a big difference. So if I were to smudge this way, what I'm doing essentially is smudging in this color onto this. But now, to undo that with 2 fingers, if I smudge this way, I'm pushing this pigment into this side. Now, if I want the pigment to go both ways, move your pencil back and forth. That's a very different look compared to the first 2 tries. And then you can also smudge this way if you want something that's more even. Now, something to remember when you're smudging is if you smudge from outside the color, like let's say go this way, you'll start to smudge in some of the white. That's just how it works. And if you want to smudge out, you start from the inside and work your way out. So that's kind of how this smudger works. So now let's go on to Smudger B. Let's zoom in and go to the smudge library and tap on Smudger B. As you can see just from the image here, it has a slightly different texture. So same thing, if I smudge this way, that's what it looks like. If I smudge the other way, that's what it looks like. And I think the most interesting results go from smudging both ways. Do you see? I kind of like that. And if I smudge in the white, it looks like that. If I smudge outwards, it looks like that. So as you can see, this effect is slightly different from this effect. So they all smudge, it's just they smudge with a slightly different texture. Then we have Smudger C, so I'm going to show you that. And as you can see here, slightly different texture. And same concept. I'm going to smudge both ways here. It's lovely. I feel like this is my favorite out of the 3. And again, what you use will really depend on the illustration of your choice. It depends on what you're doing. It's got a certain softness to it, which the other 2 don't have as much. This one's more of a messy look. This one's got softness to it. And this one's got even more of a softness to it, but with some texture. So it really depends on what you're going for. I would generally pick this one. It's my favorite, but use the one that you like the most. You have options. I wanted to give you options and you have options. Okay, so now that we've done the smudgers, let's go back to the brush library. Actually, let's go to the layers panel. Let's undo the smudgers layer, tap on erasers, and turn that on. And let's talk about the erasers. But in order to erase something, you have to lay down some pigment first. So let's go to the brush library and let's lay down some pigment with the brushy wet. Actually, no, maybe not that one. Maybe basic gouache. So just lay down some pigment. Don't need to be precise about this. Okay, now I'm going to show you what I can do with the eraser. So go to the eraser library, which is right here, and then tap on huge eraser. So the huge eraser is for erasing large areas quickly, especially when you don't want to erase everything. So when you want to erase everything on a layer, you can just clear the layer with a 3-finger swipe, a scrub. That's the gesture. But sometimes you don't want to do that. You don't want to erase everything. You just want to erase a big area and you want to do it cleanly. So I would use that. So easy to erase. Nice big area. Very easily, minimal effort. And it's clean. You don't have to go and do it twice. With some erasers, you have to do it twice because it doesn't erase well the first time. Not with the huge eraser. Okay, so now let's talk about the edge eraser. So the edge eraser here is for edges. It's not meant to do huge areas. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. So, do you see how it's erasing the edge, but it's erasing it in a way that it still has some texture. If you used the huge eraser for erasing an edge, even if you made it smaller, do you see? The edge just looks unnaturally clean. It doesn't look right because it's just so perfect. And then the rest of your shape has all this beautiful brush texture. So that's why I like to use the edge eraser. It just makes it a little bit softer and more realistic compared to using the huge eraser. And it really depends on the type of brushes you use. So the edge eraser works nicely with certain brushes. With others, it may not work as well. But you can always erase with any of the brushes that are in the set. Some may not work as well as the others. Just keep that in mind. So we laid down this color with this basic gouache A. You can select it as an eraser too, like that. And it will erase the edge as well. So just keep that in mind that some of the brushes can actually work quite well for erasing too. Just go to the eraser menu and select the brush. But if you want an edge like that, use the edge eraser tool. So that's the edge eraser tool. Now let's go in and turn this layer off and go into pencil and turn it on. And then we're going to go back to the brush library. Because now we're done with the smudging and erasing. And we're going to go to this brush right up here, the Tapered Sketch. So this Tapered Sketch is the sketch brush that I typically use with this set whenever I'm sketching something. So I'm going to go into the color menu and pick a dark gray, kind of like a pencil color. I'm going to zoom in for you. And at light pressure, that's what it looks like. At heavy pressure, it looks like that. There is a slight texture to this, and it is definitely pressure dependent. Let me show you if I increase the size. Light pressure, heavy pressure, much thicker line, slightly different look. So this is great for doing sketches of something before you actually start to color in. And also keep in mind that with this brush, if you want to create tapered ends, you can. The way to do it is when you lay down the pigment, lift your pencil off the screen as you lay down the pigment. So I'm going to lay down the pigment and I'm lifting off the screen. You see there's a slight tapered end? See, I have to do this rather quickly. It's a little bit of practice. There we go. So practice a little bit. You need good brush control, like the pencil, not brush, but the Apple Pencil control in order to do this. But you can create, tapered ends with this. If you use the same pressure throughout, you will create a line like that. But if you vary your pressure, start heavy and lighten it, you can create something like that. So play around with it and see how you feel with this brush. And definitely the size will impact how it looks. And same with the pressure. And you can use this with any color. It's not that you have to use this as a pencil that is going to be gray. Any color. So whenever I have completed painting and let's say I want to add some really precise details and I don't want to use these brushes down here, I'll just use a tapered sketch brush to add the details. So for really fine details, you get a lot more control with this brush. So yeah, I think that covers all of the brushes in this set. Now the last thing I want to talk about was the paper texture. So this brush set, the Amazing Gouache brush set, does come with paper texture canvases, and I highly suggest to use the paper texture canvases. You do not have to. The brushes work just fine without the paper texture. It's not like my watercolor brushes where I highly recommend, like you must use the paper texture. Without that, they just don't look as realistic. But for the gouache brushes, you don't have to use a paper texture, but I think it's a great idea to do so. So I'm going to go back to the gallery, and I have downloaded, you receive these two sizes, 4800 by 6000 pixel canvas, ready to go, and an 8 by 10. If you have an older iPad, you might not be able to open this one. It's quite a hefty file. So don't fret, the 8 by 10 should suffice, but definitely use the paper texture and you'll notice that everything looks a little bit nicer. So I'm going to open this 8 by 10 and I'm going to move it. So it comes in the portrait orientation, but you can move it into landscape, no problem. And let me just talk through what you get in the layers panel, just so you understand. So what you see here in the paper texture, this goes for all of my paper textures throughout all my sets, is you have a paper background, which you have the ability to turn on and off. So it's really up to you if you want to see it. And then you have a paper overlay, which is going to show up on any colored portion of your painting. So let me explain this. So let's just lay down some pigment. So I've got this pinky color here, and I'm going to go in with, let's say, maybe this basic gouache B. Just going to lay down some pigment, maybe with a larger size like this. Okay. And let's zoom in so you can really see what's going on. Okay. So as you can see, there is a paper background here. I like to paint with a paper background. However, I'd never print this paper background because printing with a paper background is a little bit tricky. Things look a little muddy. I'm personally not a fan printing with it. So if I am intending to print something, I may paint with it first, but then I go to the layers panel, turn this off and print with a white background. So I export my image with this paper background turned off. That's my personal preference. So you can always turn it on and off. So let me show you what that looks up close. Do you see paper background? No paper background. Definitely a very different look. So that's one thing that you have full control over. The other thing is the paper overlay, paper and paint overlay. So do you see here, we have this little, I guess, I don't know how to explain it. It's like little bumps. So sometimes when you paint with acrylic gouache, you will get a layer that has some paint bubbles. That's what this is supposed to mimic. And if you don't like it, you can always turn it off. So you can go in, this is a group, tap on it, tap on this, not the checkbox, tap on this to open up the group, and you can turn this layer off. Do you see those bumps are gone? And there's also a very slight paper texture. You can also turn that off. Do you see? Just keep looking here. If I turn that on and turn that on, you get this slight texture, and it's meant to be subtle. It's not meant to be overpowering, but you have control. You can go in, tap on CB, and if you want, you can always increase how much of the paper you see. I personally think it looks better. I think this is too much for me personally, but this is really a personal choice. And this also serves to change the color, the original color of your painting. Do you see? So for me, I like to keep things subtle. So I usually keep it 35, but you have control. You can definitely increase what this looks like. You can tap on this too, that paint layer with the bubbles. Go back there. Tap on CB and you see more of those paint bubbles. But if you want to see less, you can reduce it. This is totally in your control, what this looks like. So play around with it And once you have a setting that you like, just close the group. And here's my suggestion, that when you are painting, make sure you don't accidentally paint on the paper background or this paper overlay, because it will mess things up a little bit. So what I like to do is lock these layers. In order to lock it after you've done your settings, just swipe to the left, lock. And you get that little button, not button, but icon, it will lock it. And if you want to unlock it and make some changes, same thing, swipe, unlock. This way you're not accidentally painting on it. So I'm going to turn this paper background on, tap here, and lock this. I like to paint with these locked, just so that I don't accidentally paint there. And I do all my painting here. You can add as many layers as you want here. You can keep adding layers. That's where I would paint. So that's basically how I use a paper texture. The paper texture in the larger size, same concept. All of my paper textures for all of my brush sets are like this. The papers vary and some of the effects vary depending on the brush set. So that's pretty much it for today. If you have any questions regarding this brush set, you can send me an email. The email is available on my website. And thank you. Thank you very much for watching till the end. And I hope you get a lot of use out of this brush set and have a lot of fun. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video.